Welcome to episode 111 of the Half Point Per Podcast. I'm your host, Evan Riggs, joined as always by my co-host, Dalton Willie. No producer Johnny Pham today. He is off preparing to get married, eagerly awaiting Dalton and I's arrival tomorrow night to watch the Hall of Fame game. I think that is probably the highlight of this weekend, wouldn't you say, Dalton?
Yeah, did you know you can get Chris Streveler on underdog right now, 11.5 rush yards?
I was gonna say this is like a yearly tradition for you. You're sending me all these no name. It's either lines or if you're doing underdog, yeah, you're sending all these guys. You're like, I'm waiting for your DraftKings lineup. Like who's your captain in tomorrow's game in your DraftKings lineup?
Oh, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. The dude is a rushing god. He's going to show up in the preseason. I don't know if he can throw the ball, but he can move with those legs. The Browns drafted him as a rookie. They want to see what they got. I'm 100% sure Deshaun Watson will not see the field. And just a reminder to anybody watching the game, last year, Josh Jacobs played in the Hall of Fame game.
I was gonna say we're on the 1 year anniversary of the Josh Jacobs meltdown.
And some of us, I won't name names, overreacted and put Josh Jacobs on their fade list for third year in a row. And then he was RB3. So let's just not overreact to anything we see tonight or tomorrow.
But if you're listening to this in podcast form, maybe tonight or maybe it's already happened. Either way, it is exciting to have football back. Don't watch the game. Don't read anything into it. Just be happy that it is the signal that football is really almost back. We are almost there. Dalton, this is the first podcast of August, and I thought it'd be a great idea. You know, I don't know how many underdog drafts you've done. I've done a couple, but not since like at least June, maybe late May. So I haven't drafted at all for a while. I know you did a super flex draft recently, but we have not done any mock drafts on the show. So I thought it'd be a great idea to kind of jump into it, be a great way to talk through some players, some situations, maybe some draft strategies, things of that nature. And I guess where we can start is at number one overall, because that's where I opted to go, because we have not had the number one overall conversation. I figure we can at least kick it off with that real quickly here. You said beforehand you're ready to have the Justin Jefferson conversation. Has he supplanted Christian McCaffrey for you at number one overall? Because I'm heavily debating that even internally right now as this clock winds down for me.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's Justin Jefferson or bust at one overall. Last year, when Elijah Mitchell was healthy, Christian McCaffrey only got 53% of the team's rushing snaps. And that's not to like say Christian McCaffrey is not going to go nuclear and isn't the shoe-in to be RB1. It's just a bit of a cap on a ceiling. Justin Jefferson, on the other hand, led the NFL in red zone targets with 28. I think the Vikings defense probably takes another step back this year. They didn't add any weapons to it. And then if it's ever been possible for him to increase his target output, this is the season he's going to do it, with Jordan Addison lining up as what projects to be the wide receiver 2, and then Jalen Naylor suddenly getting all this camp buzz as the wide receiver 3, and then KJ Osborne. So we know what we got in Minnesota. And it's just, I think Justin Jefferson yet again is going to go nuclear, and he's just so much more of a shoe-in to not be injured by the end of the season. Like, no offense to Christian McCaffrey, but any running back has that chance to go and get hurt. It's just a lot harder for your wide receivers to do that.
Yep, obviously wide receivers can still get hurt. I get the case. It'll be something that I'm still debating internally in my head these next couple of weeks, and we'll talk maybe more about it on future shows. But I think I'm going to still go with Christian McCaffrey here. I think really my main concern, they're pretty equal for me at one, but I have more faith. We'll see how this turns out, but I have more faith in what this will look like for me if I'm looking to draft a running back at 20 or at 212, excuse me. If I'm looking to draft a receiver after I've already drafted the running back, then vice versa.
Yeah, well, and running back is pretty shaky this year all around. But going back to our ranking show and where I'm looking at it right now, I love the idea of Stephon Diggs and A.J. Brown and CeeDee Lamb staring me down as really shoe-in wide receiver ones. in this situation. Jonathan Taylor is on my do not draft list until further notice. I would avoid him at all costs. He may very well not play this season, and if he does, he could very well be a late season. I'm injured. I'm not going to play anymore. Football kind of guy where he just wanted to accrue his season. But me and Evan have Nick Chubb higher ranked than Bijan, Eckler, and Saquon. Yep. And that's who I'm going with here. I think Nick Chubb is drastically undervalued this year because that is insane that Mahomes just went.
Yeah, no kidding.
He's just drastically undervalued. That offense is going to thrive. They're going to run it through him. It's one of the best offensive lines, and he's just the best pure rusher in the NFL. And he finally gets the chance to do it with nobody there to take away touches. His underdog receiving line for touchdowns is 0.5. I'm just saying.
What are his career stats looking like on?
He has
on the rushing
4
front?
total touchdowns in 5 seasons.
I mean, so that's probably about right.
Yeah,
even without Grebo, that's probably about right.
I'm just saying. And we're back on the board here. And I mean, this is just easy money. I liked AJ Brown at 10. AJ Brown's still here.
Do you notice that AJ Brown has a star by him? I don't know what I don't know what league I even put a star by AJ Brown, but Sleeper just carries all that stuff over in perpetuity.
Yeah, mine has one as well. But AJ Brown's the guy here. He was a top 5 wide receiver last season. He's a deep threat. He works inside outside. Philly's going to continue to be a dominant offense. I have no concerns with Nick Chubb, AJ Brown start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Boy, quarterback's flying off. Let me make sure of these draft rules. Pretty sure it's
PPR snake.
Yeah, half PPR. I really wait, roster settings here. Yeah, no, it's not super flex. That's just how early they're going. Okay. All right. Ooh, Brees Hall, Josh Jacobs right before me, which is great. I don't have to make those decisions. Those are probably 2 of the toughest decisions that you could have in drafts right now. So glad. Boy, Mark Andrews really high at 2.9. I like how this has fallen to me here. Looking at Jalen Waddle, Tony Pollard. Maybe I feel better about taking Justin Jefferson if I know Tony Pollard's going to be there for me at 212. I like that a lot. And Olave and T. Higgins as well. I think back-to-back picks here, I'm going to go Tony Pollard and I'm going to go Chris Olave. We've talked a lot about Tony Pollard and how even though he may not be a true workhorse, he'll be more of a workhorse than he has been because he's never been the starter. Like he's going to be the lead guy there, unquestioned. We'll see if they bring in a veteran or not. And then Olave, I think we both are in agreement that even with Michael Thomas back, like I don't think that's going to hurt Olave at all. It may even help him because if Thomas is good, he can make life a little bit easier for Olave. Just a stud player, better situation with Derek Carr than what he had last season. Should be more deep shots there. I mean, the guy was a crazy high amount of air yards and a crazy high amount of air yards that went unconverted because of who he was playing with. So love Olave this year. Love that value with both guys at 212 and 3-1, really.
Yeah, I mean, getting Tony Pollard there is a steal. He's going in the back half of the second round when for years fantasy players have been begging for him to be a true RB1. And he was RB8 last year on RB2 touches. So, I mean, sky's the limit for him. I definitely think he should be going higher.
Yeah. I'm going to pause the draft here real quick. Go ahead. Keep talking.
Chris Olave, on the other hand, is just another player I can't stop drafting. He's going in the 3rd round. He was a borderline top 12 wide receiver last season. He was top 3 in the NFL in total air yards. He very famously had that game early in the season where he had like 350 air yards. Obviously, a lot of those were unconverted because he was playing with Andy Dalton. But there's just a lot of money to be had there with Chris Olave, and I think Derek Carr makes him a way more efficient player.
Yep, and the reason why I paused here, just looking at the 3rd round, we have Joe Burrow off the board and Jalen Hurts. So 2 questions come to mind here. Number one, since we last spoke, or maybe it happened right before the podcast or right after, I don't remember, but Joe Burrow came up with the calf strain last week. He's going to be out for multiple weeks, it sounds like. I don't know about you, Dalton. I personally am not to the point where I'm going to lower Burrow or his weapons, Chase and T. Higgins. quite yet, but I think it's at least something that we'll all be monitoring between now and when more drafts start to take place. I don't know if you have a different take on Burrow or anything with that situation right now.
No, I mean my only consideration would be him at quarterback 5, which flipping him and Josh Allen for me in my rankings would be all that would be.
Yeah.
And that's not a major change. I mean, I think the top 5 quarterbacks, including Lamar Jackson, who hasn't gotten this draft yet, is a pretty solid round. And if you end up with any of those guys, it's a start and forget all season long. So I'm not going to dock them any lower than that, though.
And then just I don't have the numbers on this to back this up, but it feels like this is one mock draft on one website where it's 2 people and then 10 AIs drafting teams, right? But 4 quarterbacks in the first 2.5 rounds feels like a lot. Mahomes to go in round 1 feels higher than years past. I'm curious if you've put any thought into whether or not we should be drafting quarterback, those top guys earlier, because it's been just so flat after those guys the last couple of years. And those guys have really been a huge advantage if you have them on your team, or if that's something that you don't really know or haven't really considered too much up to this point.
I mean, with them going this early, I'm probably going to gobble up value where I can elsewhere with a lot of these still premier players at their positions going. Because the replacement points you can get with a lot of quarterbacks is interesting. And I think there are guys later, Aaron Rodgers, Matt Stafford, and Anthony Richardson, who have that top 8 quarterback in their range of outcomes where you still get the points you need from them, and you're paying a way lower premium with draft capital.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I will say if the first 2 rounds went a certain way, where let's just say, one of Pollard and Olave is gone, and then T. Higgins, Jalen Waddle, both those guys are gone. I would have Jalen Hurts would have been in consideration for me at the 2-3 turn, and that's really never how I've drafted before. So while I still agree with you that I'm more likely to want to wait a little bit and find value at other positions and hope I can piecemeal it together at quarterback, I feel like I'm a little bit more likely this year than in years past to want to take one of those elite guys earlier. But okay, thought those were 2 points worth hitting. You're back on the board, a minute on the clock here.
I mean, the first one's easy for me. He's kind of fallen here because of the quarterback run, but I'm taking DK Metcalf. He was 6th in the league last year in red zone targets, and he didn't even convert all of those. He continues to get better. I'm not concerned about the addition of Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think all it does is open this offense up more for him and Geno Smith. They're going to be efficient. He's going to do his job. I think it's an easy pick here. He's going to continue to be as good as he's been.
Ooh, Jahmyr Gibbs goes 4-1. I know you were wanting that one to fall back to you because for your sake, I was hoping that one fell back to you.
I was hoping for Aaron Jones or Jahmyr Gibbs here, so that hurts, but we may as well just jump on the training camp highlight train here, and it's going to be Calvin Ridley. He's continued to move up in ADP all offseason. Yeah. I think he started in the 5th round. He's up to the mid-3rd on Underdog I saw this morning. I mean, all indications are he didn't lose a step. Last time we saw this guy play a full season of football alongside Julio Jones and a washed Matt Ryan, he put up 1,400 yards. He quite honestly is one of the most elite. He was being talked about as one of the most elite wide receivers in football before his suspension.
I mean, the year he got suspended, he was a top 7 or 8 wide receiver in redraft. And heck, in our dynasty league, I think I took him as wide receiver 8 or 9 off the board. So that's the kind of guy this was. You don't love that he already has a toe injury. No idea the severity, but Calvin Ridley and feet injuries kind of freak me out a little bit. So don't love that. But otherwise, yeah, I'm pretty full steam ahead on Ridley. And you're right. His ADP is going up by the day. I bet you by mid-August, if he does stay healthy, you're not going to be able to get him in home leagues at 4-3 because he's such a big name compared to some of these guys that are going in this range. All right, so, man, 2 more quarterbacks, Herbert and Fields. So what is that? We're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're at 7 quarterbacks off the board before the end of the 4th round. I swear, I checked. Everyone saw it on stream here. We don't have Superflex. It's 1 quarterback, and it's no funky scoring. It's like my Dynasty League standard scoring is what we're going with here. I'm staring down the barrel of Joe Mixon and J.K. Dobbins at this point. we kind of got the update today from Harbaugh when he talked that, he doesn't know when Dobbins is going to be back. He talks to him. He hopes it's soon. So it sounds, and the reporter kind of indicated on Twitter as well, sounds like a hold-in situation, not a knee injury situation, which is what we thought, but it was nice to see that confirmed. And then you have Joe Mixon, who, while we both agree that he has lost a step, I think he's a pretty safe top 15 type of running back. I just think Dobbins has more upside this season than Mixon has, if the health thing all turns out right and the hold-in doesn't turn out to be a holdout for the season. So I'm going to go with Dobbins here. And I really, I'm going to do it. Screw it. I'm gonna go with two young receivers and go Drake London at 5'1". We talked about London last show, so everyone kind of knows where I stand and where Dalton stands a little bit too. He's not much different, but I just feel like London has big time blow up potential. Terry McLaurin is a guy. This is a good example of deviating from your board a little bit, depending on what your team looks like. I probably could have gone safer and went with Terry McLaurin, but I'm just shooting for all upside at this wide receiver 2 pick right now, because even though he's a second-year guy, I do feel pretty safe with Olave as a top 15 type of guy. So I'm shooting for the moon with Drake London, because if he hits, I think it could be a big-time hit if the situation turns out to be right. All right, Dalton, you're on the board. No quarterbacks between you and I, but we do have another tight end and Kittle off the board. A couple of receivers I know you don't love, and Jerry Jeudy and Christian Watson going before you, so you've got to like that. And like some of your options here, DeAndre Swift, your guy, staring you right in the face in the 5th round.
The opposite of my guy. I do think I actually have my guy sitting right here in front of me. He's the most likely to be a bell cow going this late in the draft, and it's James Conner. Last season,
more likely than Alexander Madison, you think?
Yeah, I think so. Okay. I think Alexander Madison also just sucks. But last year, James Conner was a top 3 RB without Kyler Murray playing. He was involved in their passing game. I mean, it's just all around. He's the only guy on the depth chart who's going to be getting these touches. And I know it's hard to say that with a lot of teams, but very much so. James Conner is the most proven asset on this offense, and they're going to run him into the ground. And I'm going to take advantage of that and take him here in the 5th round.
You would think that would be their strategy. Man, I had to scroll to see him, and he goes at the beginning of the 2nd. What is this?
Yeah, we're getting sniped.
Brutal. All right, your second pick here at this turn.
This one hurts because I would go Tyler Lockett here. I think he's an ideal pick in the 6th round because he's very underrated. But I already took DK Metcalf, and I don't want to double up on that passing attack because there's still some variance in it. I mean, looking at what's on the board, it's not pretty. But I mean, it's really not. But I'm gonna go with somebody who's getting a lot of positive news, who seems like he's going to be able to even come out week 1 and maybe play, and Javonte Williams.
Yep.
I'm gonna take him here. I'm not gonna guarantee that he's gonna be a guy I need week 1 with Nick Chubb and James Conner. But as the season goes on, he's going to get healthier. He's going to get more involved in this offense. And we all think the offense in Denver is going to get much better under Sean Payton. And we know what Javonte Williams is capable of, which is like a top 5 running back season. So I'm happy to take him here and really hope that he's back to health when I'm making that playoff push in the playoffs. But this is a big time swing pick for me. But just the other guys here aren't exciting and don't have that league-winning upside other than Tyler Lockett, in my opinion.
I mean, pretty much everybody, this is really where you get to swing pick central. I think Madison, DeAndre Swift, Dalvin Cook doesn't even have a team right now. And he's right here. What if he goes behind Breece Hall as the backup, or what if he goes to Miami and is the starter? A lot of unknowns. Then you have guys with whether health questions, Mike Williams, situation questions, and Hollywood Brown and Michael Pittman, both in that range. And they both go before me there. Madison and Cook back-to-back. That's kind of funny. Okay, you know what? The guy that you mentioned at 6'3" is still there at 6'12", and I was kind of thinking that when you brought him up. I very much enjoy a good Tyler Lockett right here to kind of insulate that Drake London uncertainty with just the safety of Tyler Lockett. On paper, when I say on paper, on his birth certificate, you might think that this would be a time where you would fear the drop-off, but I just don't think we can really be afraid of that right now, because he had, Matt Harmon's reception perception, arguably his best year as a pro, as a route runner. So I just don't think we can forecast any kind of drop off for
Yeah, he
Lockett.
continues to be the most underrated wide receiver in fantasy for the last 5 to 6 years.
Yeah, and like I bet you JSN, who I don't have to scroll very far to see, he's going to go this round. It's going to be like a 6-pick difference, and that's like a 20 spot different in my wide receiver ranks, let alone just straight up all top 100 ranks or anything like that. And we got the report today, I believe, from NFL.com that Isaiah Pacheco should be cleared for contact by August 20th. All is going well with the hand and shoulder recovery. And we've talked about Pacheco a little bit. He'll probably end up being my guy for both of us. I love getting Pacheco as an RB4. Don't have to start him, but could definitely start for me if I have J.K. Dobbins issues or Drake London issues. I love the value of Pacheco at 7-1. That's probably my favorite pick I've made so far.
Yeah, I think it's a massive value. Obviously, we saw Clyde Edwards-Helaire have a touchdown crazy season where he didn't have to do a lot. And then Jerick McKinnon picked it right up. Talked about it on the pod where we talked about the Chiefs running back room, but they had 22 total touchdowns that are just out of that backfield alone, and I think they'll continue to do that. Obviously, Kansas City is an offense that will not QB sneak after watching Mahomes go inside out.
Right. So, they made Blake Bell sneak, but not QB sneak. Yeah. And, what happens if Pacheco continues to be involved in the passing game like he was at times down the stretch? Like, what happens if McKinnon turns into a more of a safe for the stretch run? And plus, he still finished pretty well despite McKinnon having just an all-time stretch down the season last year, which you don't anticipate that's going to happen from anybody in this backfield again.
Yeah. Now, I hate what I'm looking at here. I don't want JSN. I think he's going too high. I'm a noted George Pickens non-believer. I don't think he separates at an elite level, and he's just being asked to do too much in that offense. I am curious.
Any thought, Dak Prescott? This is kind of where you and I have the tier break at quarterback. You go from Dak to Deshaun Watson, and that's how we have it ranked out too with the guys who have gone. He's a possibility here, I would think.
I've certainly thought about it here. I think I'm going to go for a guy replacing the fourth most routes run in the NFL in Jordan Addison. He's a rookie we've been a believer in here, and Adam Thielen ran the fourth most routes in the NFL.
Yeah, it's JSN next pick and Pickens pick after that. That's funny.
It's pretty clear that they want him to be the guy alongside Justin Jefferson. He's going to get a lot of one-on-one looks, and he's not going to get a lot of press coverage, which is the biggest factor for me because that's where he was going to struggle the most in the NFL because of his stature. He's not a big guy, and this is going to be way easier for him to get the ball rolling when he doesn't have to worry about guys pressing him. He's going to get so many one-on-one looks. I can't help but take him here.
Yeah, totally get it. That probably would have been my pick as well. So you're back up a couple guys that I think all four of these guys are probably guys that you wouldn't take. Obviously, Tony, if we knew he was healthy, you probably would. But so you've got to be at least liking how the board's fallen in that regard. With that said, it is kind of tough sledding trying to decide who to take at this point. Dak is still there. That possibility is still open.
He's still there. But I think I'm just going to go for another player I think is getting discounted because of their change in situation and location. But Brandon Cooks is an enigma for me this offseason. He goes from the wide receiver 1 in his offense to the wide receiver 2, but it's such a drastic improvement in the play of quarterback that I can't help but think he's going to outcompete his ADP right now, which is wide receiver 38. It's going to make it really easy for him to do that. CeeDee Lamb's going to play in the slot, but Brandon Cooks is the field stretcher. They were hoping Gallup would come back and be, and he wasn't. And we were drafting Michael Gallup around here last year, and he wasn't. Like, he's no Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks in his career has never finished outside the top 30. So I don't see how – in points per game, sorry, not in total season because we know he has injury concerns.
Yes.
So I just don't see why he's going so late other than we're concerned about a change of scenery. But I love Brandon Cooks here.
He's just been off the radar for so long, and kind of like Tyler Lockett, he does have the age concerns, but unlike Tyler Lockett, he didn't just have a baller season last year. Yeah. So the one concern in my mind would be just what if Brandon Cooks isn't the same guy? That would be something to watch in training camp for. Boy, Tua jumped up and went ahead of Dak, even though their ADP wasn't like that. A little disappointed that Zay Flowers went mid-round here. I thought that was going to be a guy that made it back to me. Quentin Johnston off the board too. Deshaun Watson just looking into my soul right now at the 8-12. This is big time swing pick that if it were the hit, obviously this is a league winner. I just can't get the Warren Sharp Twitter thread out of my head that I sent you today of basically all of Deshaun Watson's longest throws.
He looked bad.
Were all incomplete, and most of them by a mile. Now you have Elijah Moore, you have a whole year, you have all that, but I just can't bring myself to do it. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going with what I think is similar upside in Anthony Richardson.
That has thrown my draft because that was the plan for me to take Anthony Richardson in this round.
I'm not surprised. And then with my next pick, I'm going safety here. I'm getting a position knocked out that we just don't love to talk about very much. I'm going to go with my guy, Pat Freiermuth. Just lock in what I think is a very solid top 10 tight end in fantasy this season.
Yeah, I mean, I like that pick with Anthony Richardson. I think he clearly has the ability to be a top 8 quarterback. Quarterbacks who rush for at least 500 yards have never finished outside the top 12 when it comes to fantasy, and I think that's very much within Anthony Richardson's range of outcomes.
And he's getting all the first team reps right now, so all signs are pointing to him starting week 1. And now we can debate, and we will not know the answer until we see it. We can debate all day whether or not Jonathan Taylor not being there, if that were to happen, is it good for Anthony Richardson because he gets more chances, or is it bad for him because he has more of a focus? The play action is not going to come as easy, things like that. So that's a little bit of an unknown, but yeah, I'm with you. We've talked about the upside ad nauseum. I think everybody sees it at this point because the guy was the 3rd quarterback taken in the NFL draft, and I just took him ahead of Deshaun Watson at 8-12, and I think people will do that quite frequently and are probably doing that quite frequently in best ball drafts this year. So, all right, Dalton, what are you looking at the 9-10 spot here?
I really hate how this draft has fallen to me because Samaje Perine is another player I really like here, but I have Javonte and don't want to double up on that backfield.
Yep.
But that would have given me a very easy roundabout way to get some easy points because I think they're going to split the workload. It's in Sean Payton's history to do that. I don't think he's going to change how he does that.
Yeah,
I don't love it.
You could stick by your guns. Rashad Bateman still on the PUP. We don't exactly know the extent of the injury, but we've both liked him, and you especially.
That's what I'm going with here. I think the Ravens pass more. I think that they're a very pass-happy offense. Or Todd Monken. Rashad Bateman last year when he played was one of the best players. He was had over 100 yards, and Lamar Jackson gave him his only 400-yard game. And I think he's still the best playmaker in Baltimore. Mm-hmm. Just hopefully his foot gets better.
God, yeah, I know it. Ooh, Jameson Williams picked before you. Jamal Williams off the board. That would have been some nice safety. You're still looking at no quarterback, no tight end. Just keep in mind this is a 13-round draft.
Absolutely. And I'm sticking to my guns here. I'm the kind of guy. First of all, just so everybody's clear on what my strategy would be, is Kyler Murray would be number 1 waiver at the moment I had an open roster spot with the way I'm building this team. Here, I'm going to go for another upside play. James Cook in his career has never had more than 12 touches a game. And this is career going back to college. He's not a player who's ever handled a big workload. Damian Harris looks like the next guy in line. I think the Bills want Josh Allen to touch the ball less. They want him to do less goal line. It is very scary when your quarterback is doing what he does. And obviously his arm got injured, and it did cause him some issues down the line because of that elbow injury. So I'm taking Damian Harris. He's always been an underrated back. He's always performed well at all the grading metrics. I think that he can very easily work himself into a short yardage role here on a team that's going to score a lot of points. So I'm taking Damian Harris and wrapping up my RB room.
So you aren't putting any stock into Mr. Josh Allen saying that James Cook is going to kind of be our every down, do everything guy. That's what he came out and said today.
I mean, you can say what you want to say when you're the quarterback. It just doesn't mean you're right. We have those quotes all off season, and no matter what, this Buffalo team is going to need somebody else in that backfield to take the workload off. James Cook he's not a big enough guy to handle, an 80-90% workload. And that's not a knock on him. I still think he's a good player.
Mm-hmm. I'm a little bit upset with how this fell. I was hoping one of Kirk Cousins or Geno Smith would fall to me because I think if you take Anthony Richardson, it is a good idea to insulate him with a veteran quarterback late in drafts. I think at this point, I don't love Rodgers this year. I don't love Daniel Jones. You look further down the board, Jared Goff is still there. Let's see who else. Bryce Young, don't love that. And maybe Derek Carr, Matthew Stafford. There's enough options where I think I'm going to wait on quarterback until a little bit later. So, boy, I mean, you mentioned the Elijah Mitchell splits. That is something to consider here. You have Odell. I like the two young guys too much there. You know, I think part of the reason why we both have Bijan where he's at is number one, it's just really hard to trust a rookie to do what these veterans have already done. And number two, are we sure Tyler Algier is not going to be involved in some capacity this season? Like he's not going to have too big a standalone value, but I think he's probably one of the top one or two handcuffs this season with potential for standalone value if that offense breaks a certain way. So I don't hate a late shot on Algier. I just don't see too much upside in this range. Otherwise, what do you think about that?
I love it. I mean, despite being a rookie last year, he led the league in 40-yard runs. I wouldn't say that's a sticky year-to-year stat, but it is very much so a stat that shows he's an explosive runner. PFF graded him out as their best rookie running back last year. He was top 10 in PFF's grades. He is very talented, which made the Bijan trade or pick a little more head scratching. Was they were a very good run team without adding Bijan, and I think all of that was behind Tyler Algier. So I like it, and he's probably the best one-to-one handcuff you can get right now in fantasy.
Yep, agreed. And so I think with him as my RB5, that'll probably wrap it up for me at running back. And I'm going to go with another guy, another Chief, who's probably going to be my guy for both of us because we're both I don't know with the Tony injury, but I have a feeling we're both still a little bit ahead of market on Sky Moore. And we've talked a little bit about him in that receiving room. So I won't belabor it, but all of those Chiefs young guys are getting hype right now. And it's kind of led by Sky Moore and the drum beat that he's getting. I think he could be in for a big year, especially if Tony starts the season at less than 100% and is being eased back in or is just not there for the very beginning of the season. Like Sky is the guy outside of MVS that you feel safest about in that room, which is a little bit scary. But also I think he showed some good things last season as a rookie, and they moved him around a lot last year to figure out what he could and couldn't do. He might have a more defined role in the slot, in that Juju role that fits his strengths more than what he was asked to do last season, which was play everywhere and do everything for the snaps he was in.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think he fits the slot role. He was a guy that most analysts thought was going to take a year, and a lot of us fantasy players just wanted to put him in as the plug-and-play guy because of where he was taken. Exciting for the second year. Him not returning punts and playing special teams is probably to his benefit this offseason, so he can focus with the offense. I think we're both at a market. And I think I'm probably going to keep moving him up my ranks closer to wide receiver 30, 32, 33. So here, I think I'm staring down the barrel of the gun, and they say Sandy is doing the same thing twice, expecting different results, but we're going to take Russell Wilson here.
I knew exactly where that was going before you even said the name. You know, I just saw on Twitter he threw 5 picks. He threw 5 picks in training camp, which again, that's not really that many because the camp has been in a bit. I will say I'm just a little bit more prone to be freaking out about that with Russell Wilson than some other quarterbacks at this point. But yeah, I don't hate the shot in the 11th round if you can muster a top 12 type of season out of him. Then
and once
really
Hackett was fired, he was QB 8 points per game. It was a very small sample size. I think the adults are in the room now, and Russell Wilson is not one of the adults. I think that's almost exactly what Sean Payton said about Russell Wilson, which completely fine. I'm okay with that. Sean Payton's a better offensive coach than Nathaniel Hackett, just because he's not going to run a shotgun formation on the 1-yard line and then fumble the ball and then do it again. Speaking of insanity being the same thing you do over and over again and expect different results. So, and again, just so anybody watching or listening, my strategy with this team at the end of this would be to target Kyler Murray pretty quickly on PUP and get him on my team because I think he will come back and play at some point this season. Now, if someone takes Kyler Murray,
as I say, I'm looking right now. He's 147 overall, so he is definitely going to be drafted in this auto pick draft.
Yeah.
You could draft him right here, double up, just take 2 quarterbacks.
I won't, because the next guy I'm taking, especially with that cup injury, Tyler Higbee. Tyler Higbee was tight end 6 last season. Like, this is just one of those, there's nobody home. I mean, we got Puka Nacua, Van Jefferson. Anybody remember?
I think it's Nacua. I think it's Puka Nacua.
Exactly. And I mean, we have gotten to the point of the season where people are talking about DeMarcus Robinson as the wide receiver 2 in LA.
Yeah.
So the wide receiver 2 is Tyler Higbee. They're going to pass a lot.
As Chiefs fans, we can tell you, if you're talking about DeMarcus Robinson as your wide receiver 2, you better have a good number 1, which you do have Kupp is out there, but boy, that is still a lot of pressure on Cooper Kupp. If
you're going to have a bad day if DeMarcus Robinson's your wide receiver 2.
Yep. Okay. I need to take a quarterback with one of these picks, and I don't think Bryce Young or Kyler Murray really fit the profile. The problem is these top 3 quarterbacks, none of them fit the profile of what I'd be looking for. Derek Carr is tempting. Matthew Stafford also is tempting, but to be frank, that's a big risk profile with Matthew Stafford. So I don't know. I kind of don't like any of those guys. And just looking down the list, I think maybe between like Ryan Tannehill, Brock Purdy, and if Stafford goes undrafted, I think this team could find enough on the waiver wire that I'm going to pivot away from quarterback. It still really stings that neither Cousins or Geno fell to me at 10-12. That's what I was really hoping for. And so I'm going to lean back in the running back here. And, this was not one of my favorite prospects, but I'm a little bit of a Travis Etienne skeptic by and large, I would say. And we've been hearing a lot of good Tank Bigsby stuff out of camp. So I didn't love the prospect, but we've had a lot of hype. It seems like he's got that backup spot. I think we're in agreement that we don't think that Etienne is going to get the same snap share as he did last season, and that he shouldn't really, to be frank. And so that between the tackle stuff for Bigsby is there to be had.
Yeah. And I like that. I mean, he is going to be the goal line back. Last year, it was pretty evident that Travis Etienne struggled at converting goal line carries. He just wasn't very good at it. Tank Bigsby, if he's going to do anything, he's going to be converting those carries. And it's going to be a fun offense that scores a lot of points. And when you're targeting backup running backs, you want offenses that are going to be scoring a lot of points. That's basically how Jamal Williams became Jamal Williams last offseason. It wasn't because he was a super good runner. It's because he had 17 touchdowns.
Yep. Absolutely, boy. I'm going from a good offense.
Star Romeo Doubs and Jordan Love. I've lost questions.
I think those were both waiver wire stars. But I think I didn't even end up bidding on Dubs, but Brian bid all 200 of his fab on Dubs, so that was irrelevant. Jordan Love may have been for this waiver cycle, and then I just didn't bid on him. I think that's what that is. I somehow, as the guy in Dynasty that has a bazillion receivers, I somehow only have 4 receivers on this team right now. And one of them is Sky Moore, who I like, but don't feel like great about that. I feel great about the top 3. Don't feel great about who 4 and then now who 5 is at this point. You have Rashee Rice, who I think has upside, Zay Jones as well. I'm going Nico Collins. I like Nico Collins as a player. Don't love the situation, but if the situation can be a little bit improved from last season, I think there's some sneaky value in Nico Collins, especially if he's going this late in drafts.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, he's his team's wide receiver 1. I know the word out of the Texans camp was we don't have a wide receiver 1. If anybody saw that news clip today, but he's the best player. He established the most rapport. He out-targeted Brandon Cooks in his last 5 games last season. So there's a lot of hype
and Brandon Cooks, and not that I'm saying your pick was wrong, but he went 5 rounds before this.
Yeah, and I mean he's the best X receiver on the team. It's him and Robert Woods who are going for the X, and then it's a bunch of John Mechie and Tank Dell are slot guys or slot flanker guys. So he's not being competed for the targets he wants. I like that. Despite advertising my exact strategy to all of my draft mates, none of them capitalized on it. And even though I'm stuck with Russell Wilson, I get Russell Wilson 2.0 coming off an ACL injury and Kyler Murray. So I'm taking Kyler Murray here, round out my quarterback room. He's a top 7 quarterback when he's healthy. He has the running potential. We'll be interested to see what the all Short Kings team does with all of their tiny wide receivers along with Kyler Murray. But certainly an exciting pick for me to finish the draft.
Yep. Yep, I like that. And I like how the end of this draft fell for my team for waiver wire purposes. None of those quarterbacks I was talking about went at the end of this draft. It was Bryce Young, Jordan Love, Kyler Murray, you, and then Stroud. So all those guys with a higher risk profile who I don't want to pair with Richardson go. So I like my decision at the end of the day of splitting this one up and splitting from my strategy, I should say, and just going with running back and receiver to top it all off. All right, Dalton, a couple takeaways as we wrap this up here. Do you have a preference just looking at my team, looking at your team? We like similar guys. We dislike similar guys. Do you think picking first or picking 10th, and maybe more specifically, picking in the top couple of picks or back couple of picks, do you like that more now that you saw how this draft kind of fell?
Well, I like how mine played out, but a lot of that centers around how running back heavy you ended up going. And as you said, you're really not about that
Mm-hmm.
usually, and I'm usually not about that. I think if Justin Jefferson was your 1-1 instead of CMC, I would like your team a lot more. It's shaky to think Drake London as your third wide receiver or your second wide receiver, and just putting your faith in that Atlanta offense. I like the idea of a Metcalf, AJ Brown, Ridley start and forget lineup. But
Yep.
I mean, I will be just absolutely locked in to the medical reports on Javonte Williams for the next 5 weeks with this team, which is stressful.
Yep. And yeah, looking at how it fell, I said this at the beginning, but had I known Tony Pollard was going to make it to 212, I think that would have probably been my tiebreaker to go Jefferson at 1-1 because, again, I don't like Pollard as some like first round pick or anything, but I think he should be more like the 2-4, like 2-5, 2-6, somewhere in that early to mid second round instead of like I'm looking, I'd take him probably.
Obviously, over JT, who just went because of ADP, I might like him more than
I still think
Henry
I would take Jonathan Taylor right now, today.
over Pollard.
Yeah.
That is insane. I would never do that.
I just think it's still the most likely scenario is him playing.
Yeah, it's certainly possible.
I think it's. I mean, again, we don't know anything. We're it's just it's all conjecture at this point from us. But I just think that the most likely scenario is Jonathan Taylor plays and he's awesome because Jonathan Taylor's awesome, and whoever takes him in the I'm trying to even find where he went.
JT,
What? Yeah.
he went.
Oh, he went 2-2 right before
2-2.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think that's fine. I think that's fine value for Jonathan Taylor. Like I would maybe take AJ Brown over him, but that's it. Like maybe one spot further down for me. I just think he's just such a good player that's so hard to find at running back. Like I would still take him over Bijan, who went 1-7.
I would definitely take Bijan over him. I'm really concerned about this situation. I think that there might be some irreparable harm done to his relationship with that general manager in Jim Irsay.
That may be true, but like what it's kind of like with Saquon and Josh Jacobs. Now, one of those has been resolved, one of them has not been, so we'll see. But he doesn't have any leverage, and in fact, he has even less leverage himself than Josh Jacobs because he can get tagged at least after this year and maybe 2 more years. Like they've got him on tag, so they basically have him for 3 more years if they want him. So I get what he's trying to do. I get why he's mad, but this is just it's just a systematic problem for running backs right now. I'm not sure what Jonathan Taylor is supposed to do now. If it is August 23rd and I'm in my draft and things are still sitting how they are, I might feel differently, but it is August 3rd right now. So with what we know on August 3rd, I am more likely to believe that Taylor is back and in the fold and playing week 1.
Yeah, I just this early in the draft, I just want to avoid that risk profile altogether.
I get it.
Yeah, and his back injury, I don't know if that's a real thing or not, but
It doesn't seem like it. It doesn't seem like it. I think he's still recovering from the ankle injury. I think he had off-season ankle surgery, right?
Yeah.
After the year last year, but yeah, I don't know about that back injury. But yeah, I think I would have gone Jefferson 1 had I known that Pollard would be there. And frankly, I don't know. J.K. Dobbins is a tough one because I'm a lot higher than ADP, but I still thought he'd go higher than being there at the 4-5 turn for me in this draft. So yeah, the running back just fell short. Where but I look at every running back I took, and I think they're all of value. So it just is like, yeah, I do wish I went Jefferson 1, but other than that, maybe my it's not even a regret, but you talk about kind of the risk profile of your team and trying to build a team a certain way. I think if I didn't take Anthony Richardson at 8-12, I would have gone elsewhere at 9 and then taken Kincaid at 11-1. I didn't want Kincaid and Anthony Richardson both as standalone starters on my team because that's just a slow start for a fantasy team waiting to happen if things don't start smoothly for those guys. But I have some small regrets over maybe not, waiting on quarterback, taking Kincaid and kind of piecemealing veterans around later. But I don't know. By and large, I feel pretty good about how this went. I would think for you, obviously you have Kyler Murray, which is nice, but I would think maybe the Russell Wilson point of things is probably your biggest source of stress outside of Javonte Williams' injury report.
Yeah, I mean, they get Las Vegas week 1, so the goal there is just
they got Seattle week 1 last year. I know Seattle ended up being a lot better than we thought, but we thought, oh man, Russ is gonna go in there and put on a show, and then
he put on a show. That was an entertaining game for better or worse. No, I mean that's the biggest regret is the way quarterback fell this. I just couldn't get one of the top guys, and I didn't want to reach for him.
Do you have any regrets with how this fell? You would have had to take Dak instead of Brandon Cooks. Would you rather have Dak than Brandon Cooks, and then you figure it out with another, receiver maybe later on your draft where you took one of those quarterbacks?
Yeah, I mean, I probably would have felt more comfortable taking Dak, swapping out Cooks, and then later I probably would have taken Jameson Williams instead of Damian Harris, and then probably Jerick McKinnon. Just looking at what's next to my team, those are 2 picks that would have been something I would have shot for.
Man, Jameson Williams, loved the prospect. I can't even say love the player because it's just theoretical. So I still have to say love the prospect with this guy. But I just can't get behind drafting him right now. I just don't think I can do it. He's gonna miss the first 6 weeks of the season. Boy, you're gonna be, if you would have taken him and you somehow ended up with Kyler Murray, you would have been all IR squad there.
Yeah,
but
him, Javonte.
Him and Javonte too. You probably wouldn't have had Kyler if you went elsewhere, a quarterback, I guess. But yeah, the fact that he's gonna miss 6 weeks, depending on your IR rules, if you can draft him and then turn right around after your draft, move him on the IR, and then pick somebody up, if you can get him in the 10th round of your draft, that's not a major opportunity cost, but you can still find. I mean, Damian Harris will help your team. Samaje Perine will help your team. I think I definitely would rather have Elijah Moore than Jameson Williams actually on my team this year, even with the Deshaun uncertainty there. Like Jameson, did he get injured in camp? I know he's been in in fights, which I'm not big on the training camp fight concern, but it's just.
Concern is
I'm more concerned about it with him than with Travis Kelce. I guess I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Well, Campbell set out and said he had to work on his hand mechanics.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's not something coming from college that we were ever concerned about. But Dan Campbell does seem like one of those coaches where if you're not playing the game the way he tells you to play the game, you're not going to be on the field.
Yep.
And then it does become more concerning when you look at his snap shares last year. He never cleared 30%. I know he was coming back from an ACL injury, but we legitimately haven't seen this guy, a first-round pick, on the field in an NFL game play a 60% snap share. And his whole career is one touchdown.
He literally has 1 reception for 49 yards and 1 touchdown. That is his stat line. It's way too early to call this, so please don't take me as me calling this, but you talking about you have to do certain things to be on the field for Dan Campbell, it's just like DeAndre Swift, just lightning bolt, went straight through in one ear, out the other ear when you said that. So that makes me a little bit scared for Jameson. But yeah, I just can't, unless you can go and stick him straight on your IR, I can't get behind drafting him. And even if you can do that, I think you're missing out on some value. It really depends on team structure, though. Looking at that team that he got drafted to specifically, Now, again, these are computers who aren't thinking through this
That
kind of
seems
strategy.
terrible.
Yeah, it is. But you have Kenneth Walker, you have JSN, you have Kadarius Toney. Like, that's enough risk for me. Those three guys alone.
Juju.
Yeah, and then Juju too with his knee, and then the situation not being ideal. So yeah, I just you have to have a pretty low risk profile for me to want to add a Jameson Williams to my team.
Yeah, I think you have to start pretty wide receiver heavy. Like, he has to be somebody you're not relying on.
Yeah, agreed there. Dalton, anything else that stands out to you about the way the draft fell for you, for me, or just looking at any other teams? We talked about quarterbacks. Tight end, it was about normal, it seems like. Any other big takeaways? Like Kyle Pitts at 5'12". This might be, what's the term? Post-hype sleeper. Not really a sleeper, but post-hype breakout maybe for Kyle Pitts, because 5'12", actually, he's getting to the point where he might be affordable and might be on a team of mine if that's where I can get him.
Well, I heard this fun stat from the Athletics today, but last season in uncatchable throws, Zach Wilson was number 1. Number 3 was Marcus Mariota.
I thought you were going to say number 3 was any quarterback throwing the Kyle Pitts, because that's kind of just what it's felt like for the last.
But it is funny because number 2 was Desmond Ridder in his 4-game span.
So basically, number 2.5 was quarterbacks throwing the Kyle Pitts.
But I think he's probably going to be a buy guy, and I'll talk about it more. But I think James Conner in the 5th round, especially the late 5th round, is egregious with some of the guys going above him.
Yeah,
I mean, I think him and Miles Sanders pretty interchangeable. I think Dameon Pierce going a full round above him is insane. I think him and Najee Harris are probably the same thing this season, and you're getting him at a 2-round discount. So super excited about that. Probably my favorite pick of the draft was getting James Conner there, and then Nick Chubb at the back of the 1st round. I still think he should be in the like Austin Eckler range of picks.
Yeah, I agree. I would have Chubb in half-point scoring as the top 5 or 6 pick. All right, Dalton, anything else before we close it on out of here?
I think that wraps it up for me.
All right, that is going to do it for episode 111 of the Half Point Per Podcast. Give us a follow on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Half Point Per Pod. Subscribe to us on the YouTube channel. That way you can follow mock drafts when we do them live. You can follow along. I've had the screen shared the whole time. I will tweet out a picture of our teams with the podcast as well, so people can see that. The show is available anywhere you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple, all that good stuff. We'll be back next week. I'm not sure what the topic is, but we are definitely into the my guys, sleepers, breakouts, busts. We are in the thick of it, so looking forward to that. Thank you all so much for listening, and we'll talk to you again next week.